can feel it coming in the air tonight. Oh Lord, I've been waiting for this moment all of my life. Oh Lord, I can feel it coming in the air tonight. Oh Lord, oh Lord. I actually got to do a lot of traveling in my life. I feel very grateful and I feel very blessed to have seen parts of the world that most won't. And I don't think I can say that I have a favorite because they were all such unique experiences. But I want to talk about a few that stand out in the way they impacted my understanding of the world because they were really, really amazing. The first time I went out of the country, I did go to Ireland, and in America by 2004, I believe was when I went, it was pretty ubiquitous to walk into a coffee shop or in most cases even a bar and have free Wi-Fi. And yet here I was in Dublin, and not only was it not free, but it wasn't even very readily available. There were parts of it, though, that were very unique, such as learning that they preserved their Gaelic language, that it's taught in the schools to all of the children. And it was a neat country to visit because it had so many big rolling hills. And only years later, when I looked back, would I start to understand what formed that incredible geography. I loved to play golf at the time. I played a bunch of golf while I was there. And so it was a very fulfilling experience to visit an English-speaking country that still had a culture that was quite different from ours and very enjoyable to interact with. And I had the same experience a year or two later when I took my father to Scotland and did the Scottish golf thing, if you will, and visited those sites. And it's only when you get to these countries that you begin to have a different sense of how power structures, if you will, impact the adoption and the rollout of technology or ideas. And I say this because when I got to one of the last trips I took, which was in 2008, in May of 2008, I actually got to go to Beijing right before the Olympics. And I could do hours on seeing these special infrastructural moments within the whole thing that show how divided and what a class system it was. The rings around Beijing were immense walls. And as with all power systems, it eventually failed. And so I got to walk in and visit the inner sanctum areas of the Forbidden City in Beijing and visit the vendors along the outside wall of the inner city. And it was so interesting to watch this very modern city spring out of, a second or third world country city, which was also one of the things I found so interesting, was how the people of Beijing really could be divided into two groups. You might say those who were alive when Mao came into power and those who were the grandchildren of those people, because the youth seemed fairly accustomed now to what looked like a fairly Western lifestyle, but they were still hanging laundry off of the balconies and in the windows, and there were other affectations that just reminded me of a country that didn't know exactly how modern they were just yet. By that time, the Gobi Desert was invading. I played golf, and there was no water in the water holes. And so, as I drove across the land on buses, I suddenly became deeply aware of just how terrible the ecological disaster has been in China, and how awful the pollution was, and that their rivers are not only polluted, but they barely exist, or they're gushing because they're overflowing. The people were very kind, very unique, and very fun. And I did. I enjoyed the entire experience. I could spend hours talking about it. But you know, a funny thing happened in 2008. That fall, the housing bubble burst, and the upcoming trip had been canceled. And so they were canceled for a couple of years, in fact. And the next trip that we went on was to Paris in 2011. And that was the last trip that I went on. And Paris was really unique because what an old city. I got to go down in the catacombs where the limestone mines were originally dug, and I saw the Moulin Rouge show. That was fun. And visit the restaurants, and you know, I'm very grateful that we didn't bomb the daylights out of that city in World War II, because it has such character and such beauty, and its people were so generous. I was sitting in a cafe having a glass of wine, and I saw a young man walk past, and he looked rather dapper. He was wearing a scarf, and I realized just how comfortable that gentleman was with who he was. And he owned that scarf. And I realized that that was the kind of confidence that I desired. One where I'm happy in my own skin, and I feel good no matter what I do. France is unique in a lot of ways, not just because of its first drive towards independence and freedom, but how that effectuation has happened over many, many decades, and centuries, and millennia. We have a hidden history to learn about these different places and these different countries. And getting to see how some of these different parts of the world develop their cultures, to see the similarities and the differences, most importantly, just to meet the people, was a real honor. Thank you for having me in your countries. Hopefully, we can get rid of those countries. Someday we can all visit these places freely, because our world is a beautiful place. We're meant to visit it. We're meant to care for it. We're meant to love it. And we're meant to mix and become the best us we can become. I thank you guys very much. I'll see you in a couple weeks. Peace. I can feel it coming in the air tonight. Oh Lord, I've been waiting for this moment for all of my life. Oh Lord, oh Lord.